What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC, and in this video I'm checking out the Vosteed Raccoon, which I'm super excited about because it's a knife I've been wanting to check out for a while. Vosteed is a relatively new company that started in 2021, but they have a pretty large lineup going already. This is probably their most popular model that I know of. And so I mentioned in a comment on Surviving the Dailies channel on the same knife that I was thinking about checking it out. A mutual viewer, Seamus Collins, reached out saying he was planning on ordering one. If I'd like, he'd have it delivered to me and I could forward it over after I'm done with it. So this one will be shipped off to him after this video is over, but shout out to him. I'll link to his Instagram. He does some really cool art where he's drawing his way through the encyclopedia. He also has a series where he draws authors of various books in the title page of the books themselves. So really cool stuff. If you're into art, check him out. But super thankful for him sending this over because it does get pretty expensive buying the stuff that I show on the channel. It's not the biggest deal in the world because it's stuff that I would be picking up anyway. But it does allow me to, in this case, it was a knife I wanted to check out, but it allows me to reallocate those funds to something else, which is exactly what I did. You'll see that knife in the next video. I pre-ordered a knife that pretty much the same cost, and so again, super grateful for that. But the knife itself is a button lock, budget friendly, from Vosteed. It is $59 over on Amazon. It's sold out on the Vosteed website. I'd imagine at some point it'll come back in stock, but you still can get this on Amazon. I'll link in the description. It's for a button lock, really well done, and I did a video previously comparing some of the budget button locks from Civivi, QSP, Kaiser, and then to ProTech. ProTech's obviously significantly more expensive than the rest of those. Kaiser felt the best, and this feels pretty comparable to the Kaiser knife. Honestly, it's about the same, and funnily enough, both Kaiser and Vosteed were in a controversy a little bit earlier this year with the spine whack test, which is just whacking the spine. I'm not going to do it here because underneath this vinyl wrap is glass, and so it will shatter it, but whacking the spine and having the lock fail. And so that was one thing that Seamus was curious about. I did test it on a kind of gel desk mat because I didn't want to damage the blade itself, but whacked it about as hard, a little bit harder than what I saw in some of the tests where it failed. It held up, and that's because when that happened, Vosteed addressed it by changing a little bit about how the internals are angled so that it held up a little bit better, but they also reached out and said, you know, if you're unhappy with it, definitely reach out. They'll exchange it for the newer version, they'll refund it. So they handled it really well, which is great, especially for a new company, because we all saw last year there was a controversy with Heat Treat and someone, the knife maker, sending a cease and desist over a heat treat rather than just resolving the issue. Similarly with the knife designer, just a month or so ago, there was a complaint about detent, and instead of addressing it, he went after the YouTuber, both calling the review itself a hit piece, but also personally. And so good to see a company just handling it the right way. It's impressive. But it did hold up, and it's kind of one of those things where I wasn't super worried about it anyway, because I'm not going to be hard using or batoning with a button lock. But at the same time, you never know when you're going to turn and whack this on the side of your counter or table and have that fail and risk cutting your hand. Obviously, you're not going to do that intentionally, but you never know. And so it is good that they were able to resolve it. I'm pretty confident that this one will handle that well. You can see kind of with that locking gauge, just engaging about 50% or so of the blade, which is more than a lot of knives you see. A lot of times you'll see 33% or so, and so it's engaging pretty far. I'm pretty confident that they've resolved that issue now. Now the rest of the knife is really great EDC size for me personally, kind of right in that Goldilocks zone, 7.6 inches overall. 4.36 of that's on the handle, although not all of it's usable. You can see this kind of finger groove here, everything in front of that's not so usable, but I am still able to get a full 4-finger grip very comfortably, and that works well. You can see my pinky's right there on the end, so if your hands are a little bit larger than mine, you might hang off just a little bit. You can choke up into that sharpening choil very comfortably as well, but nothing to keep you from rolling onto that blade, so do that at your own risk. But the blade on it's 14C28N drop point style blade, 3.25 inches, and nice full flat grind on there. It's got thumb stud deployment, you can also obviously use that button lock as a deployment method. So you got the two options. The thumb stud deployment, detent's really good on there, really smooth. It is on cage ball bearings. And then again, that button lock, you can just do a wrist flick and that works just as well. The button lock, when it's closed, is pretty much flush with the scales. Really nice, always like that. There was some of the other models of the budget button locks, you see the button just protruding quite a bit, and don't love that. So really like that this one's flush. It does obviously stick out when the knife is open, but that has to happen because obviously that plunger lifts when the blade's not in the way, allowing you to use it as a lock. And so when you push that in, you can see the plunger in action, and just make sure your fingers are out of the way and just drop shut. So super clean there. It is really ambidextrous friendly, and obviously with the thumb studs, those are on both sides. The button lock you can do with your thumb on your right hand, your index finger on your left, and thankfully they did include that in the pocket clip, which is reversible. Not a full deep carry, but I'd still classify this as a deep carry. You got about 1/4 of an inch there exposed, and so nice pocket clip on it as well. And it does have this kind of insert or inlay for the gap on the other side where the pocket clip sits. And some people like that, some people don't. Obviously you can remove it. I personally like it. Some people think it's a little bit of an eyesore, stands out, but I definitely prefer it over just having a random gap in the handle. And so glad they did that. They do have a lanyard hole which goes through that back spacer, and overall pretty lightweight, 3.39 ounces, which is pretty good for this size and feels really good in the pocket. Again, that button lock super smooth, and overall really impressed with this for a $59 knife. Has these micarta handles. Obviously you can oil these up or let them kind of absorb the oils from your hand. This is going to darken up a little bit over time, but really soft micarta, really nicely well done. A little bit kind of rough around the edges, but I like the look of it. Overall, the one weird thing, which it doesn't affect the function at all, is the pivot here. So T8 on the pivot, T6 on all the rest of the screws, all that's normal, but the pivot is only tooled on one side, which isn't super weird, but the one side that it's tooled on is actually the show side. A lot of times when you see that, the tooled side will be the non-show side. So you can see this side, there's no opening for your Torx bit. And so almost always when that's the case, it's going to have the non-tooled side on the show side just because it looks a little bit better. But for whatever reason, it's backwards on this one. And I'm not sure if that's every model or they just did it backwards on this one. So I'm going to have to check out some other videos and pictures to see if that's always the case. Again, doesn't affect the function at all, but a little bit of a weird choice, I guess. Now, other thing to mention is the billboarding on this is really minimal. I think super clean design, and I like the design of it a lot. It's a really user-friendly design that looks good. But the billboarding they keep right up against the handle, which I love. So Vosteed on the show side, the non-show side, you have the model and steel Raccoon 14C28N. And so really well done there. Always appreciate that. And super happy with this knife. Definitely between the kind of quality of the knife and how they handled that initial spine whack controversy, definitely makes me kind of deal in confidence with the brand in the future. You know, I'm definitely hesitant to deal with the other ones that I kind of referenced just because that's how they handle it. You don't want to be in a situation where you need to contact customer service, or me as a reviewer mentioning, you know, negative things about the knife, which I'm always going to do if they come up, and worry about them retaliating. So really appreciative of how they handled that again. One other thing I wanted to mention was the packaging, which is really cool on these. So it comes in this kind of cardboard sleeve, but the package itself is in a tin, which is really nice, really well done. You have inside, I'm not going to actually open it, I'll just pull it. You have inside the knife case as well as some stickers and this info card, which gives you everything you need to know about the model, which is nice. Vosteed Raccoon on the back side, and then on this side it tells you the blade material, Sandvik 14C28N, 3.25 inch blade length, drop point style blade, flat grind, satin finish, micarta handles, and the plunge lock. So really nice touch. I really appreciated the packaging on this. Another one of those things which I don't always show, but if it's well done, I will show it. And this is really well done, especially for a knife in this budget, for them to kind of go above and beyond on the packaging. I'm sure it doesn't cost them that much more, but they are adding a couple dollars in cost to kind of impress you from the get-go, which I always appreciate. So Let me know what you think down in the comments below of this knife. If you had the first generation and did the spine whack test, how it held up. If you have the second generation and did it, if you had any issues. I did see on Reddit someone posting a failure with the newer generation, which I think was in February, having that issue. But with anything, when you're making this many knives, if you have 1,000, 1 out of 1,000, it's really not something that I'd be super concerned about. If it was still super widespread, I would be a little bit more concerned, but it does seem for the most part that they resolved it with those changes. But again, thanks so much for watching. As always, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button. Big shout out again to Seamus. Thank you so much. I'll have this in the mail to you tomorrow. But as always, I hope you have a great one. Take care.